This is All India Radio. In the program Spotlight now, we bring you a discussion on reactions of global communities on situation in Afghanistan. The participants are Vishnu Prakash, former ambassador, and Nilova Roy Chaudhary, journalist.
Good evening. 10 days after the capture of Kabul by the Taliban, there is still no clarity on the shape of any government of that beleaguered country, nor any sense of how the group, designated still as a terrorist organization by the United Nations, will govern Afghanistan. Leaders of the G7 met virtually in an emergency session on Tuesday to try and formulate a common policy on how they plan to tackle the situation going ahead. To explain some of these complex issues facing Afghanistan and the region, Ambassador Vishnu Prakash joins us and will walk us through the possible scenarios. Ambassador Prakash, while expressing their grave concern at events in Afghanistan, the G7 leaders reiterated that Afghanistan must never again become a safe haven for terrorism, nor a source of terrorist attacks on others. Does that statement provide you with any sense of security or commitment?
Oh, very much. I am feeling so secure, and the Taliban is shivering in its boots because of this very strong verbal missile from G7. Let's get real, Nilova. G7 has the day the US decided, or rather on the 29th of February 2020, when the US said, we are leaving Afghanistan on the 31st of May 2021, they lost it. Because that is the day when the Taliban smelled victory. And after that, everything was compounded by the hasty 9th of August they pulled out, and within 6-7 days, the Taliban was in Kabul. Shows it all. And now the US has been asking Taliban support in getting its citizens out of Afghanistan. So clearly, Western world, G7, the US are on the back foot. And these are nothing but verbal missiles which are not going to have much of an influence on the Taliban.
Yesterday at this meeting, US President Joe Biden also did not seek to extend the timeline for the withdrawal of troops beyond August 31st. So how do you think the situation is now going to pan out from September the 1st onwards? Will there be more chaos?
I think it was more of a play of words. If you were to read between the lines, there have been, and it was mentioned that the US and Taliban are on regular contact. Bill Burns was there to meet Mullah Baradar day before yesterday. So what would they have spoken of? The immediate thing that they would have spoken of is the need of Taliban support, or at least that they should not obstruct the safe evacuation of the Americans and the Europeans. I think that is the primary requirement at the moment. But there would be some kind of an arrangement, because since the Doha Accord, the American forces have not been attacked. And they would be something like this, that let our people go out and we will see what we can do. We will not impose sanctions and we will try to work with the Taliban. It has not been said, but this is what I see happening. And also they have said that, look, they will do what it takes to get people out. They are also talking of a contingency planning. They are also talking of an expectation of smooth evacuation. So what does contingency planning mean? It means that if they have to stay on, they will. Taliban cannot, of course, say upfront that, yes, please, Mr. US, stay on as long as you like. Remember, the first deal was that by the 31st of May, the Americans will pull out. They did not. Taliban extended it. So realistically speaking, till the last American is pulled out, the Americans will have no choice but to extend their mission.
Now, all of this seems to point to the fact very clearly that the Americans made this pact with the devil, as it considers the Taliban, the devil, given that they're still a terrorist entity. But how, in all conscience, can the United States actually go ahead do something like this? I mean, we have been speaking continuously to the United States and our sort of partners in the G7. How do you allow the sovereign country to speak to a terrorist organization and negotiate over and above a government of that country?
Well, conscience is a word which sounds very nice, just as President Biden has been speaking of democracy, human rights, respect for women, freedom of religion, etc. Very good. But what has been done on ground is that you have left the women and children, the most vulnerable section of the Afghan society, to fend for themselves. So at the end of the day, it is just national interests. And if you are a major power as the US is, you will pursue your national interests and you will then try to construct a narrative where you will try to show that it has been done in the favor of humanity. Don't we all remember when the spokesperson of the Foreign Office, was it, or the State Department, said that Americans getting vaccinated is in the global interest. So that is how reality is, and we have to face it.
Now, have we been sort of shoring up our own national interest in terms of engaging perhaps at some kind of back channel level with the Taliban? I mean, how are we proposing to take our national interest forward at this point of time?
Let us first define our national interest because there is a little bit of ambiguity. Many people say that we have made a $3 billion investment. I would say that no, it's not an investment. Investment means returns. Well, if you want returns, we have got returns in terms of the goodwill that it has generated in Afghanistan, but this is developmental assistance as a grant that we have provided to the people of Afghanistan. And I don't think that Taliban will cut its nose to spite the face, or will they destroy the parliament building? Will they destroy the Salma Dam? Will they blow up the roads? I don't think so. Now, we have the interest of people of Indian origin, Hindus and the Sikhs and Christians who are vulnerable. So obviously we would like to safeguard their interests. And last but not the least, or perhaps the most important, is that Pakistan, our friendly neighbor, which has nurtured Taliban, which has given them safe haven, armed them, would want to have the Taliban train their guns at India. But that is our immediate challenge. But they will all have to come through POK because that's the only way. Not that we cannot handle it. We have been dealing with Pakistani proxy war and terrorism for 42 years. We have in the past also blunted the Pakistani wave after wave of terror attacks. And we have the capability, but they can be deployed to create more problems. So our effort would be to talk to Taliban if and when we do. I hope they moderate themselves and we can talk to them. Is to say, look, please do not work against our interests. We will not work against yours. Not that they will completely listen to us, but if we have a line of communication with them, the mischief-making potential of Pakistan will be blunted to an extent. So that is our interest. And as I said, in case Taliban moderates itself, we should have no difficulty in talking because A, they are in effective control, and B, talking does not mean recognition or encouragement. It basically means that we tell them that, look, you are in effective control. We recognize that. We agree to disagree with your policies, but we are willing to say, let's agree to disagree, but we are willing to talk.
Now, is that given the fact that already after the initial sort of positive sounding overtures, women in government have been told to stay at home. Various provinces, girls have been told not to go to school. So slowly but surely the entire women sort of disappearing from the scene is getting scarier and scarier. And, it doesn't look terribly different from Taliban 1.0. So, from the G7 meeting and the statement that they gave out yesterday, are you getting any kind of sense of what, if any, levers there might be to hold the Taliban to account on these issues?
Well, the leverage that the Western world has is funds. The Taliban to govern needs funds, and they will be deficient of funds. So yes, to that extent, the Afghan funds that have been frozen or further assistance, budgetary support, etc., will be of importance. But will be something which will persuade Taliban to act in a certain way? I do not think so, because they will be underwritten by Pakistan, which is bankrupt, but they will still underwrite them. China, which will dole out money, they have the narco money, they have the taxation, so they will eke it out. But certainly it will cause difficulties for the Taliban. Yet if this happens, then Taliban will behave the way they did and it will embarrass the Western world further. So it is something like MAD, mutual assured destruction, that you either work with us or we cause complications to each other. I have a feeling that people will hum and haw and fall in line, and Taliban will, to an extent, moderate itself. But what kind of moderation? There will be no democracy. Women's liberty will be curtailed dramatically. But you remember the scenes that we saw where a hapless woman was buried half deep in a pit and then or limbs were chopped off.
Horrifying.
It's horrifying. So long as this version of Sharia, this brutal version, this violent version is not applied, I guess the world will heave a sigh of relief. But there's no doubt about it that women's rights will be curtailed. But Nilova, last point here, the biggest check on the excesses of Taliban will not be the American or the Western demands, but will be something called the social media. And that is one very big difference between 2001 and 2021. Today, it will become that much more difficult for the Taliban to cover up its crimes and excesses because 70% of the Afghans have access to telephone and they are quite net savvy, social media savvy. So that will be the bigger check on the Taliban because they also want to present a face to the world which is different, if not benign, but different.
Why should they want to appear more favorably inclined or present this softer face to the world? I mean, how does it...
Absolutely. Very valid question. And that is because what have they learnt in the wilderness? 20 years in wilderness, whom were they dependent on? They were dependent on Pakistan. Pakistan loves to play both sides. Mullah Baradar was in the Pakistani prison for 8 years. I can assure you it was not a bed of roses. Have you heard of where Habibullah Akhundzada is? Who is the third spiritual leader? There is speculation that he is in Pakistani custody. Pakistan has perfected the art of playing snakes and ladders with everybody. And there is no loss between Taliban and Pakistan. So let's put ourselves in the shoes of a Talibani leader. I mean, I don't wish anybody to be in their shoes, but suppose they are. Would they want to get back to the wilderness after 5 years? Or they would want, having learned their lessons, they would want to continue with their administration. And now that they see that China, Russia, Iran, Turkey, etc. are supporting them, and they have also acquired the finesse, the skill sets to present a softer face to the world. They have understood what PR is. Would they not want to at least ease themselves from the clutches of Pakistan, if not free? So I think in their own interest and to continue to be in power, they have understood that they cannot behave the way they, hopefully, I hope I'm not speaking too soon, but hopefully they have understood that they will have to moderate their stance. They can still remain Taliban, they can still introduce Sharia. All that they have to do is to eliminate the cruelties that they inflicted on the people of Afghanistan.
The superpowers have come and gone and nobody's actually at the end of the day been bothered about the actual people of that country and what they want. And each time they get buffeted from one extreme to the other extreme, and it's a very sad situation. But finally, Vishnu, do you think the G7 statement gave any kind of inclination of whether they were in any hurry to maybe recognize a Taliban regime, or is that something of a holdout that can be used as a lever also?
You know, Nilova, nothing succeeds like success. And when there is somebody manages to defy odds, then recognition gravitates towards them. Now that Taliban is in effective control, and Russia and China, which are two major powers, they are permanent members of the UN Security Council. China has deep pockets. China has strategic interest to see the back of the Americans. You know, it's a matter of time. If not today, then tomorrow. I think countries will fall in line. Remember, the venerable British CDS had already said that they are country bumpkins. So cut some slack to them. I think that narrative will grow. And before long, the Western world will justify the reason to sup with the Taliban. That's how the cookie crumbles and that is how the world behaves. The rest is good politics, good optics, but nothing more than that.
So at the end of the day, we have to sort of very cautiously wait and watch and follow what's happening and hold our cards very close to our chests. Would that be a correct assessment?
Well, I don't know how many cards we have, but yes, in diplomacy, there is a time to act, there is a time to watch, there is time to speak, there is time to be silent, and nothing is going to be known in a hurry. It could be weeks, it could be months, because we don't even know which is the real Taliban. We don't know what is they up to. There are factions in the Taliban. So wait and watch and take a decision at the right time.
Thank you very much indeed, Ambassador Prakash.
Pleasure is all mine.
You were listening to a discussion on reactions of global communities on situation in Afghanistan. The participants were Vishnu Prakash, former ambassador, and Nilova Roy Chaudhary, journalist. The program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio.